Hello everyone. I'm the storyteller from the channel Whispered Tales and I'm here to help you today. I know you use this video to fall asleep, so before that, like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, where are you from? At what time are you watching? Now, get comfortable and relax. The road narrowed the farther he drove, curling into the folds of the mountain like a forgotten thread. The sun had disappeared behind the pines long before it had truly set, and a thick, ancient fog pressed against the windows of the car like curious fingers, blurring the world outside into a gray wash of trees and stone. Thomas hadn't spoken aloud in hours. The radio had long given out to static. The GPS had frozen back at the fork in the road, a place he only vaguely remembered passing, where the trees had leaned a little too close and the silence had grown too deep. The cabin had been listed as secluded, rustic, atmospheric in the rental ad. It had looked charming in the photos: weathered wood, a crooked chimney, nestled alone in a clearing surrounded by dark pine. Perfect, he had thought. A place to disappear. A place to be alone. The gravel crunched beneath his tires as the car rolled to a stop. Fog coiled around the porch steps like misted breath. He stepped out into a silence so dense it rang in his ears. The cabin looked just like the photos. And yet, it didn't. The shape was the same. The chimney still bent slightly left. But the wood was darker, more warped. Like it had been soaked and frozen and thawed 100 times in secret. The windows reflected nothing. Not the forest. Not the car. Not even him. He pulled his coat tighter and climbed the steps. The porch groaned under his weight, not a protesting sound, but more of a greeting. As if it had been waiting for him. The key, rusted and old, lay exactly where the owner had said, beneath a stone frog on the windowsill. Thomas turned it in the lock, and the door creaked open with a sigh. Inside, the air smelled of ash and old pine. Dust hung in slow motes, drifting in shafts of gray light. Everything was covered in that same faded palette, soft browns, tarnished brass, and the cold scent of forgotten things. He lit the fireplace. The flames hissed to life reluctantly, throwing dancing shadows along the walls. The old wood crackled, and for a while, he just sat there, staring into the fire, letting it warm the silence. But the silence never really lifted. Somewhere behind the walls, there was a sound. Faint. A creaking floorboard, maybe. Or something smaller. Something crawling. He shook it off. Old houses made sounds. Especially ones like this. Especially deep in the woods. Especially after dark. Later that night, Thomas unpacked only the essentials: his notebook, a few clothes, and a strange antique pocket watch he had found in a thrift store on his way up. It ticked, but slowly. Like it wasn't counting time the same way everything else did. He lay in bed, the covers pulled tight around him. Outside, the wind had picked up. It didn't howl, it whispered. Soft. Urgent. Like it had a secret it needed to tell him before morning. He closed his eyes. That was when he heard it. A knock. 3 soft taps. Not on the door. Not on the window. From beneath the floor. He sat up, heart pounding. The cabin was still. He waited. Nothing. Just the wind, brushing against the outside like fingertips dragging along the walls. He lay back down, tried to ignore it. But the knocking came again. Slower this time. Tap. 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 Always 3. Then silence. The morning came with gray light. A dull, colorless world outside the windows. The fire had long gone out. The air was colder now, and when Thomas walked to the small kitchen, his breath misted in the air. He made coffee. Stared out the back window. Something had walked through the snow. Not boot prints. Not animal tracks. Just long, smooth drags. As if something heavy had been pulled from the woods to the cabin. There was no sign of whatever had made them. Only the trail. And even that was slowly fading as new flakes fell from the colorless sky. He almost convinced himself he imagined it. Almost. Thomas spent most of the morning sitting by the fire, eyes unfocused, mind drifting. He hadn't written a single word in his notebook. The pen lay untouched on the wooden table, the pages curled slightly at the edges from the cold. Every so often, his gaze would flick to the floor. To the planks near the center of the room, where the sound had come from. Where something had knocked from underneath. It was ridiculous, he told himself. The kind of thing your brain invents in half-sleep. A dream smuggled into the waking world. But part of him, some quieter, older part, wasn't so sure. When he finally stood, he moved slowly. The way you move when you're being watched. He crossed to the floorboards and crouched. There were no seams. No hatch. No crawlspace access. Just smooth, old wood. Worn to a dull shine in places, slightly warped in others. He placed his palm flat against it. Cold. Not just cool from the air, but deeper. The kind of cold that feels like a breath from below. He drew his hand back and stood. The wind outside hissed softly through the eaves. Later, after lunch, he ventured outside. The trail he had seen in the snow was almost gone, but not entirely. He followed it with hesitant steps. It led past the edge of the clearing. Into the forest. The trees were dense here, massive old pines, their bark black with age, their branches sagging with frost. Every footstep was muffled. The world pressed close around him, still and watchful. He walked for perhaps 10 minutes before he saw it. A stone. Large, flat, moss-covered. Half buried in the snow and leaves. At first he thought it was just a boulder, but as he brushed the surface clean, letters emerged. Carved by hand. Deep and rough. Here she waited, here she fell, the date below had been worn away. Thomas stepped back. The wind had stopped again. No birds. No movement. Just that line, etched into the stone like a whisper made permanent. He turned and walked back to the cabin. He didn't look behind him. That night, he tried not to listen. He built the fire up high, left the lamp burning, turned on his phone to play music, even though there was no signal. But still, the silence slipped between every note. And so, when it came again, he wasn't surprised. Tap. 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 He didn't move. Tap. 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 This time, it wasn't under the floor. It was inside the walls. Something about the rhythm was wrong. The timing. The intention. It wasn't random. It wasn't the wind or the old house settling. It was deliberate. He rose slowly, bare feet cold on the floorboards. The sound stopped. He crept to the far wall, near the fireplace. Listened. Nothing. Then, a breath. Not his own. Soft and slow, right on the other side of the wall. It lingered for just a moment, then it was gone. Thomas stepped back, heart pounding. And then, a new sound. The old grandfather clock in the hallway, silent since his arrival, ticked once. Just once. The next morning, he found something he hadn't noticed before. A door at the back of the pantry. Half hidden behind shelves and cans. It was narrow and crooked, almost too small to be useful. He opened it. A staircase led down into darkness. He stared into it for a long time. Eventually, he closed the door and walked away. Later, trying to distract himself, he flipped through one of the cabin's old books. A faded journal, written in tight cursive. The name on the front page was illegible, the ink smeared and warped. But some entries remained readable. She won't stop knocking. It always comes in threes. I tried blocking the stairs. Didn't matter. She finds a way. She always finds a way. Thomas turned the page. Dreams again. The same place. The whispering grove. The tree with the hollow heart. I saw her face in the bark, not a ghost. Not exactly. She's older than that. A hunger. Something buried. Something listening. The pages became more frenzied. The handwriting broke down. The last entry was only 2 words, scrawled over and over. Stay awake, stay awake, stay awake. That night, Thomas dreamed. He stood in the forest. But the trees were dead now, bleached white, stripped of bark, reaching like bone fingers into a moonless sky. There was something in the air. A hum. Deep and low. He felt it more than heard it. Like it was moving under his skin. Ahead, the trees parted. A clearing. A single, gnarled tree in the center, its trunk hollowed like a mouth frozen in mid-scream. He stepped closer. The inside of the tree was filled with hair. Black, matted, tangled. Something moved beneath it. Slowly. He reached forward, and woke up. The fire was out. The room was cold. And the knocking had returned. But now, it was from inside the bedroom. 3 taps, soft and deliberate, on the back of the closet door. He didn't move. Didn't breathe. Then, a slow creak. The closet door was opening. The closet door creaked open, inch by inch, until its shadowy interior yawned toward him like the mouth of a cave. Thomas lay still, heart pounding so hard he was sure it would shake the walls. No sound came from within. No movement. Just the still, dense darkness of the space beyond. Blacker than it should have been. As if the closet was deeper than the room allowed. As if the back of it opened into somewhere else. He didn't rise. He didn't call out. Eventually, he drifted back into a shallow sleep, filled with fog and distant footsteps crunching through snow. In the morning, the closet stood open. Inside, it was empty. A few rusted wire hangers, a wooden shelf, dust thick along the floor. But something else had changed. His notebook, the one on the table, had been moved. It now lay on the floor beside his bed. Open. The last page had words on it. He didn't write them. In large, looping script, "You should not have come." He snapped the book shut and shoved it into his bag. He needed to leave. He packed in under 15 minutes. Every zipper, every folded shirt, done in silence. The car keys were cold in his hand. The fire smoldered behind him, its embers long past warmth. As he stepped outside, snow had started again, soft, gentle flakes drifting lazily in the windless morning. The woods were still. He got in the car. Turned the key. The engine coughed. Sputtered. Then went silent. He tried again. Nothing. The battery was dead. He sat there for a long moment, gripping the wheel. The fog pressed close against the windshield, and for the first time, he noticed the condensation inside the glass. A handprint. Faint. Human-sized. Smudged. Pressed against the inside of the back window. He locked the doors. That night, he stayed by the fire. Every lamp on. His phone useless. Even the flashlight app only flickered for a moment before the screen glitched and went black. Time moved strangely. The ticking of the grandfather clock had returned, slow and uneven. Sometimes it ticked once every 5 seconds. Other times, 2 ticks came at once. But it never chimed. And the knocking didn't return that night. Instead, the whispers began. Faint. Just beneath hearing. Like a conversation on the other side of a thin wall. Too quiet to make out, but too deliberate to ignore. He pressed his ear to the living room wall. They stopped. He moved to the hallway. Stilled his breath. Pressed his ear to the wall again. A voice, low and brittle, like a wind through dry leaves. "You will not leave, you are ours, now we remember." He staggered back. The wall was warm. The journal he found earlier lay on the table. He hadn't opened it since the day before, but now it was turned to a different page. The handwriting was new. I dug down. I had to know. Had to see if it was still there. The bones. The hole. Her mouth was open. Another line, hastily scribbled beneath it, "She sleeps when it's quiet." Thomas stared at the page, then looked toward the pantry. The narrow door. The staircase below. He didn't sleep. Every hour, the sounds grew louder. The whispers became laughter. Then sobbing. Then something that sounded like chewing. At 3:06 a.m., the pantry door creaked open on its own. He rose. Picked up the flashlight. And stepped inside. The stairs groaned beneath his feet. The walls were close. The air stale and wet. The light flickered, once, then again. Below him, the steps disappeared into pitch black. At the bottom, the basement opened wide. It was earthen, no concrete, no paneling. Just packed dirt and rotted wood. Old tools hung rusted on nails. Cobwebs stretched like veins across the ceiling. In the center of the room, a hole. shallow, maybe 4 feet wide. A spade rested beside it. He stepped closer. There were bones in the hole. Small, human, and not alone. Several sets. Some broken. Some curled as if in sleep. And beside them, something wrapped in hair. Long, black, matted. A skull protruded halfway from the bundle, mouth stretched wide in a silent scream. He stumbled back, tripping over the spade, and fell hard against the floor. The flashlight clattered to the ground, and in the brief flicker as it spun, he saw it, a figure. Across the room. Standing in the far corner. Pale, long-limbed, faceless. Not moving. Just watching. When he looked again, it was gone. He bolted upstairs. Slammed the pantry door shut. Wedged a chair beneath the handle. His heart wouldn't slow. His skin felt too tight. Like something beneath it was trying to crawl out. And then, as he turned around, the clock chimed. Once. The walls around him were whispering again. But this time, they were saying his name. Thomas. Thomas. We remember you. You came back. He retreated to the bedroom and locked the door. But the whispers followed. The voice beneath the floor returned. Tap. 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 He lay down, tears in his eyes. And as he closed them, something climbed up onto the bed. He felt the weight. A body, light but real. Then breath, right against his ear. And a whisper, tomorrow, we open the skin. Thomas didn't move. He couldn't. The pressure on the bed remained, an unseen weight pressed against the blankets at his side. The whisper still echoed in his ear, cold and wet, like breath exhaled from a mouth filled with soil. Tomorrow, we open the skin. His eyes darted around the room, searching for movement, for shape, for anything human, but the shadows refused to take form. They only deepened. Stretched. Shifted, slightly, as if turning to face him. Then the weight lifted. The bed creaked once. Footsteps padded away across the wooden floor. And the closet door closed on its own. Click. He didn't sleep the rest of that night. He didn't light the fire. He didn't move from the bed until pale gray light leaked through the curtains. But even in daylight, the house didn't feel safer. It felt hungrier. The air seemed thicker. The light, dull and smeared. The clocks had stopped again, this time, each one frozen at a different hour. He tried his phone once more. No signal. Battery at 66%, but the screen flickered when he touched it. He put it away. Around noon, something strange happened. The silence lifted. Briefly. Just long enough for Thomas to hear something outside. Voices. Faint. Laughter, maybe? And the crunch of footsteps in the snow. He jumped to his feet and rushed to the window, nearly slipping on the floorboards as he did. In the clearing, near the edge of the trees, 2 figures. A man and a woman. Walking, holding hands. They were dressed in clothes too light for winter. Their heads bowed. Faces hidden. Hey! Thomas shouted. He threw the door open. Please. Help. My car's dead, I need. The man looked up. No face. No eyes. No mouth. Just smooth, pale skin stretched like canvas. The woman turned, too. Same. They began to walk toward him. Thomas slammed the door shut. They were gone. He sat in the armchair by the fire, unlit, his body wrapped in a blanket. But the cold wasn't coming from outside anymore. It was coming from beneath. The floorboards radiated a chill that clung to his bones. That was when he heard the first voice again. The brittle one. It came from inside the wall behind the chair. They're watching. Don't open the floor. Don't go back down. It feeds on the gaze. Then silence. He stood slowly, heart thundering. Moved to the wall. Pressed his hand against it. Warm again. Warmer than his skin. Like breath held just beneath the surface. He tried to write. Anything. Something to give his mind shape. But the pen shook in his hand, and every time he looked down at the page, the words were wrong. He didn't remember writing. We were roots once. We stretched. We listened. Then came the mouth. He flipped the page. Another line, scrawled over and over, under. 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 He dropped the pen. As dusk fell, the house began to change. He first noticed it in the hallway. The shadows weren't where they should be. Corners stretched too far. Doorways seemed narrower. Longer. The front door was gone. In its place, a blank wall of wood. He ran to it. Pressed his palms against it. No seam. No knob. No hinge. Only wall. He turned. The windows had vanished too. In their place, long vertical mirrors. He stared at one. In the reflection, himself. But his reflection was smiling. He was not. That night, the pantry door creaked open again. But the chair was still wedged under the handle. It hadn't moved. The door had opened without disturbing the chair. As if it had never been a door at all. Thomas approached it slowly. The stairwell gaped below, darker now than before. No light reached the bottom. The shadows pulsed softly, like a slow, steady breath. He didn't want to descend again. He had to. This time, the basement was different. The hole was deeper. Wider. The bones were gone. But the hair remained, longer now, spread across the floor like spilled ink. And above it, nailed to the wall, photos. Black and white. Curled and water-damaged. Dozens of them. Each showing people, men, women, children, standing in the clearing outside. All dressed for different decades. 1930s, 1970s. One in a tracksuit from the 2000s. But all of them had one thing in common. Their faces were gone. Each photo had been scratched, burned, or blurred to erase their features. In the middle of the wall, one new photo. Him. Standing in front of the cabin. Smiling. But he had no memory of it being taken. And like the others, his face had been removed. The whisper came again. This time from the hole. It wasn't words. Just a sound. A chorus of breathing. Deep, collective. Inhale. Exhale. He stumbled backward. Turned to run. But the basement stairs were gone. Where they had been, only wall. He woke up on the floor. Back in the living room. The fire was burning again, though he hadn't lit it. The flames were wrong, though. Too still. Too quiet. They didn't flicker. They just glowed. He sat up slowly. Every surface in the room was covered in symbols. Carved into the floor, the walls, the ceiling. Circles. Lines. Shapes he couldn't comprehend. They shimmered faintly in the firelight. A voice spoke from nowhere. She is closer now. The roots have grown through you. Sleep is a gate. You left it open. Then silence. In the mirror above the fireplace, he saw himself again. But this time, his reflection was whispering. He couldn't hear the words. But it didn't stop moving its lips. Then it raised one hand. Pressed it against the glass. Blood began to seep from its nose. And then, the glass cracked. A chime from the hallway. The clock again. But not one. 3 chimes. Long, hollow. Heavy. Each one echoed through the floor. With each chime, the knocking returned. But not just one place. Now from every direction. Under the floor. Inside the walls. Behind the mirror. Inside his own chest. Tap. 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 He screamed. But the sound didn't come out of his mouth. It came from beneath the floorboards. Thomas didn't know how long he lay curled on the floor. The knocking had stopped. The chimes were gone. Even the whispers had quieted. But the quiet felt worse. Like breath held too long. The fire had burned down to embers, but the walls still glowed with those faint, etched symbols, like veins pulsing with low light. He rose unsteadily. His head felt full of cotton and rust. Every thought came slow. Muffled. In the mirror, his reflection was gone. Only the room stared back at him. Empty. He found himself drawn to the journal again. Not the one from the table. The other one. The one he hadn't seen before. A thick leather-bound book, now sitting on the floor near the hearth as though it had always been there. He picked it up. The cover was cracked. The clasp, warm to the touch. Inside, a single phrase repeated again and again, page after page, she remembers everything. Then, on a torn page near the center, the tree in the grove holds her face. She drinks the dreams of those who come near. If you hear her voice, it's already too late. If you see your own face on her bark, she has begun to make a nest of your mind. Beneath it, a drawing. A tree with a hollow trunk. Inside the hollow, something that looked like an eye. And beneath the eye, hair. Tangled. Flowing. He knew the tree. From his dream. From before. He left the cabin just before dusk. No bag. No coat. Only the flashlight and the journal. The door opened for him this time, though he never touched the handle. The snow outside was deeper than he remembered. Crisp, untouched. No tracks. Even his own vanished behind him as he walked. The trees greeted him in silence. They were closer now. Taller. The forest no longer felt like trees at all, but ribs. Like he was walking through the inside of something sleeping. Or waiting. After nearly an hour, he found it. The grove. A circle of bare earth, surrounded by pines twisted in spirals. At its center, the tree. The same one from the drawing. Thick, gnarled, hunched like an old woman kneeling in prayer. The trunk split in two like a yawning mouth, dark and hollow. And inside, hair. Wet, knotted, draped along the interior like curtains. He stepped closer. His breath fogged in front of him, but it didn't drift. It hung still. Heavy. The air in the grove didn't move. He leaned in. Inside the hollow, he saw something else now. A face. Carved into the bark. But not by human hand. The face was his. He screamed. Staggered back. The branches above creaked. The windless air seemed to pulse. And the ground beneath him shifted, not shaking, but breathing. Roots stirred below the surface. He turned to run. But the grove had changed. No trail. No direction. Only trees. Infinite. Repeating. And somewhere behind him, a whisper. Not in words. A hum. Familiar. And then, just beneath it, his name. Thomas, Thomas, come see, he ran. Branches clawed at his face. The air thickened. Every step grew harder, as if the snow were rising to his knees, then thighs, then waist, until he fell. Into nothing. He woke on the cabin floor. The fire was gone. No embers. No light. The room was black. His limbs were stiff. His skin pale. His fingers ached with cold. He tried to move, but something was holding him down. He looked. Hair. Thin, black strands. Crawling over his arms. Wrapping slowly around his legs. Sliding across the floor like vines. He screamed. Rolled. Pulled free. The strands retreated. Slithered back into the cracks in the floorboards. He scrambled upright and flipped the nearest lamp on. It sputtered, but worked. The room filled with dim light. And he saw it. On the wall. A new carving. Fresh. Deep. His own face. Etched in jagged strokes, mouth open, eyes hollow. Beneath it, a line, you are the last. Then I will be whole. He collapsed onto the couch. Tried to remember why he had come here in the first place. The writing retreat? The recommendation? No. That wasn't it. There was something else. Buried deeper. A dream. A memory. Something warm. His mother's voice. A fire. A story. Yes. That was it. A bedtime story. From long ago. The woman under the floor. The one who waited for footsteps. The one who took your name if you whispered it after dark. He thought it was just a tale. But it wasn't a story. It was a warning. And he had forgotten. The clock chimed again. 4 chimes. Each one deeper than the last. And with the final toll, the door at the end of the hall opened. The one he had never tried. A thin corridor lay beyond. Stone walls. Flickering light. As if it had always been there, waiting. Something pulled him forward. At the end of the corridor, a room. Circular. Carved from old stone. The floor was dirt. The ceiling curved high above into darkness. At the center, a well. Dry. He peered into it. His breath caught. No bottom. Only shadow. And rising from it, a sound. A lullaby. Off-key. Off-human. Soft words woven into the melody, too distorted to understand. But they pulled at him. And then, a hand reached up. Long pale. Too many joints. Fingers like roots. It touched the edge of the well. Then another. Then a face began to rise. Hair first. Then bone-white skin. No eyes. No mouth. Just a face like smoothed bark, carved into something vaguely human. Then it spoke. But the mouth didn't move. The sound came from the walls, the floor, the air in his lungs. You brought me back. You wore my name in your dreams. You left the gate open when you were a child. And I followed you. For years. Until now. The well cracked around its rim. The stones bled. He turned and ran. Down the hall. Through the door. Back into the cabin, only it wasn't the cabin anymore. It was the forest again. Endless. Silent. And above him, the moon. But it was wrong. It had her face. Watching. Waiting. And smiling. The trees stretched on without end. He ran until his legs burned and his chest cracked with cold, but every direction looked the same. No stars above, only that pale, watching moon. A moon with her face carved into it, watching through the sky like an eye trapped behind bone. Eventually, Thomas fell to his knees. The snow wasn't snow anymore. It was ash. Fine, gray, and soft. Rising with every step he had taken. And now it coated his skin, caked his mouth, filled his nostrils. He spat, coughed. The ash tasted like something long dead. Not wood. Not fire. Teeth. And somewhere behind him, that hum again. Closer. More voices. This time, not whispering. Chanting. He turned and saw them. Dozens of figures. Pale. Still. Lining the edges of the forest like statues. Each wore his face. Some smiling. Some crying. Some with no eyes, mouth sewn shut. But all of them staring at him. They began to move. Not walking. Not floating. Just sliding forward. He stumbled back, tripping over a root. But when he looked down, it wasn't a root. It was hair, buried beneath the ash. It coiled around his ankle, warm and pulsing like a vein. He kicked, pulled, screamed. The figures drew closer. And then, just before they reached him, they vanished. Gone in an instant. The forest blinked. He was back in the cabin. Again. Only this time, it was wrong. The walls were covered in mirrors now, floor to ceiling. And behind each pane of glass, someone was watching him. Not his reflection. Not shadows. But versions of himself. Standing in different rooms, different clothes. One was a boy, maybe 10 years old. Another, older, wrinkled, gaunt. One had no face at all. Just a smear of skin. And one mouthed something. Slowly. Thomas leaned in, trying to read the lips. You already died here. The floor split open beneath him. No time to react. He fell through the mirror, through the wood, through his own image, down. 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 When he opened his eyes, he was in a room. Not the cabin. Not the forest. A hospital? No. Older. Dim, the smell of bleach and age. Walls painted the pale green of 1950s sanitariums. The floor a cracked black tile. Everything was silent, save for the beep of a single heart monitor in the corner. He turned. The bed. A body. Himself. Thinner. Wasted. Tubes in every vein. Mouth open in a scream that never ended. The monitor flatlined. And from the body's mouth, hair began to spill out. Black. Wet. Endless. It poured over the bed. The walls. The floor. It reached for him. He screamed. He woke in the armchair. Back in the cabin. Again. Only this time, a man sat across from him. Old. Bearded. Hollow-eyed. He recognized the face. From the photos in the basement. From the journals. From the mirror. The first one. You made it far, the old man said, voice like gravel and rust. Most don't get this deep. Thomas couldn't speak. The old man leaned forward. She doesn't eat flesh. She eats memory. She burrows through the cracks of who you are, wears your names like clothes. You let her in when you were a boy, didn't you? Whispered her name when you shouldn't have. She heard it. And she waits. She waits until you forget. Thomas managed to choke out, what is she? The old man's eyes glistened. The first silence. The womb under the world. The hollow that birthed the idea of fear. She is the gap between breaths. The voice you almost hear when your mind goes quiet. The thing behind mirrors, learning your shape. He stood slowly. His feet didn't touch the ground. And now she's inside you. He walked through the wall and vanished. Thomas stumbled to the bathroom. Splashed water on his face. Looked in the mirror. This time, the reflection looked almost right. But something was wrong. He leaned closer. No pupils. Just a dim glow behind the eyes, like something looking out from behind a mask. The mouth began to move. He wasn't speaking. But it was. You aren't Thomas anymore. Thomas is gone. You're the mouth now. The mirror cracked. And he smiled. He tore through the cabin, screaming. Walls bleeding. Clocks spinning backward. Books whispering in reverse. The pantry door opened on its own. The stairs waited, lit by a pale, red glow. He went down. The basement had changed. The hole was gone. Now a tunnel stretched ahead, carved from rock and roots. It pulsed with every breath he took. Hair grew from the walls. Eyes blinked in the dark. He walked for what felt like hours. Until he reached the final chamber. The tree. But it wasn't in a forest now. It was here. At the center of the earth. Upside down. Its roots growing into the sky of this underground world, reaching for something above. At its base, a hollow. And from within it, she emerged. Hair first. Then bone. Then bark. Then face. His face. Her voice was a chorus of everyone he had ever loved. Sleep now. Let me finish wearing you. You've been dreaming of me your whole life. Thomas fell to his knees. Tears mixed with ash. And the last thing he saw was her smile. Split wide across his own face. The wind had stopped again. The cabin stood still at the edge of the world. Half buried in frost, alone in the clearing, its roof draped in sheets of ice like a frozen tombstone. The path to its door wound through trees now crooked with age, their bark flaking like dead skin. Inside, everything waited. The mirror in the hall. The empty hearth. The hollow behind the stairs. The whispers, silent, for now. Until the sound of tires broke the stillness. Crackling over the brittle snow. A car approached. The forest held its breath. Her name was Emily. She had driven 8 hours for this, an escape from the city, a retreat from the static of her life. Her sister had found the listing online, remote artist's cabin. No neighbors for miles. Ideal for writing or reflection. It had 5 stars. All the reviews were old. All of them ended with the same phrase, didn't want to leave. Emily parked beside the cabin, engine ticking in the cold. The air outside felt thinner than she expected. The trees too close together. Still, she smiled. The keys were under the mat, just as the host had promised. She let herself in. The cabin greeted her like an old friend. Dustless. Warm. The fireplace crackled quietly, though she didn't remember anyone saying it would be lit. Cozy furniture. Wooden beams. An old phonograph on the mantel. She wandered the rooms. Everything neat. Unnervingly neat. In the main room, an armchair beside the fire, a table with a single chair, and a thick, closed book on its surface. It wasn't hers. Bound in dark leather, unmarked. She opened it. Inside, a name, Thomas Gray. And beneath it, a single line. If you're reading this, she knows your name now. She laughed uneasily. Assumed it was some weird guestbook joke. Still, she closed the journal. Her fingers trembled. Night came early. The moon outside full and strange. Emily sat in the armchair, her laptop open but untouched. She couldn't focus. The silence in the woods felt too dense, too aware. The wind pressed against the windows like breath. And the mirror in the hallway, hadn't it been blank before? Now it showed her reflection. But, not quite. Her head tilted. But the reflection didn't move. It just watched. Unblinking. The next morning, she found the door to the basement. It hadn't been there the night before. She stared at it. Listened. Nothing. The handle was cold. Too cold. Almost wet. She didn't open it. Not yet. By the third day, she began to dream. A tree in the dark. A voice humming a song she couldn't remember, but knew from somewhere. A hallway of mirrors. Her own face staring back at her from behind the bark of a tree. And always, the hum. Growing louder. Feeding on the silence. She found new pages in Thomas's journal. They hadn't been there before. Her name was written at the top of one. Emily. You're not the first. But maybe you can be the last. Don't let her learn your face. Don't look into the mirrors after midnight. Don't follow the sound. And whatever you do, don't say your name out loud. Her skin crawled. She wanted to leave. But the road was gone. She walked a mile in both directions. Only forest. Only trees. No tracks. No signal. No sound. Just snow. And ash beneath it. She began seeing her reflection in more places. The window. The spoon. The water in the sink. Each time, wrong. Each time, smiling when she wasn't. Each time, mouthing something she couldn't hear. And when she leaned closer, the reflection would stop moving. Then, it would whisper. Let me try it on. Just for a little while. She shattered the mirror in the hall. But the next morning, it was whole again. And she was smiling in it. On the fifth night, she opened the basement door. The tunnel was there. Dark. Wet. Breathing. She lit a candle. Descended slowly. The path stretched longer than it should have. Time bent. And at the end, the grove. The tree. Still pulsing. Still waiting. Only now, the face in its bark wasn't Thomas. It was hers. Mouth open. Eyes closed. Hair growing like roots into the earth. She ran. Back through the tunnel. Back up the stairs. Back into the cabin. But the door was gone. Just wall. Just wood. And the fire had gone out. The mirrors were all shattered. But her reflection still lived inside each shard. And they were all laughing now. That night, she dreamed of the well. Not in the forest, but beneath the cabin. A well that reached into something deeper than death. Inside, the voice called. And this time, she answered. Emily didn't sleep that night. Even after the fire returned on its own. even after the cabin made itself warm again. She stayed in the armchair, staring at her hands. They weren't shaking, but she felt like they should have been. She had seen her own face carved in bark, felt the heartbeat of a tunnel in the dark, seen her reflection watching her with a hunger she could feel in her skin. And the worst part? Some deep part of her already knew this was no ordinary place. Knew she had dreamed of this tree before, this voice, this presence, long before she ever found the listing or drove into the mountains. It had been in her childhood nightmares. It had followed her, waiting, dormant, until now. The next morning, she woke on the floor. Though she hadn't remembered falling asleep, there was dirt on her fingers, and strands of black hair between her teeth. She retched, gagged, pulled clumps of it from her mouth, slick and warm, still moving. But when she blinked again, it was gone. No hair, no dirt, no taste of earth. The room was clean, the morning sunlight cheerful, as if the cabin wanted her to forget. She almost let it. She found herself pacing the hall. The mirror still cracked, but her reflection no longer smiled on its own. It only stared now, passive, observing, waiting. She touched the glass. It was warm. She whispered, "Who are you?" And her reflection whispered back, "You." Almost. Then it blinked. And she didn't. That afternoon, the radio turned on by itself. She hadn't even known the cabin had a radio. A crackle of static, then, 13 missing, third in 2 months, no trace, search suspended, then more static. And then a voice. Soft, gentle, familiar. Her mother's voice. "Emily, darling, it's so warm here. I've missed you." But her mother had died 5 years ago. She whispered, "This isn't real." The radio answered, "You always say that. But you're still listening." The voice changed. Deeper. Rougher. "Keep listening, and soon, you'll understand." The static surged. Then silence. She unplugged it. It kept playing anyway. She began finding symbols on her skin. Faint at first, like pressure marks after sleep. Then deeper, burned in like frostbite. Lines, circles, spirals. They shifted each time she looked away, as if they were being written from the inside. She scrubbed them. They bled. She looked in the mirror. They weren't on her reflection. That night, the whispers returned. Not outside. Inside the cabin. Inside her mind. "There's a door inside you. Let me open it. You'll feel better when I'm whole." She curled up under the table, fingers in her ears, humming to drown them out. It didn't work. They hummed back. In harmony. She began losing time. Hours vanished. She would blink, and the room would shift. Night turned to day without memory of sleep. Meals uneaten but gone. The fire always lit. Always watching. She opened the journal again. New pages had appeared. Written in her own handwriting. I keep seeing her in the glass. I keep hearing her in the trees. And sometimes, I let her speak through me. My mouth moves. My voice doesn't sound right. I feel her in my teeth. In my bones. Building a nest. I think I'm cracking. Not like glass. Like an egg. On the 7th day, she returned to the basement. The tunnel greeted her like a lover. It pulsed with a heartbeat she could feel in her feet, her chest, her tongue. The farther she walked, the less she felt her body. And yet, something else stirred within her. A slow stretching. Like something waking up after a long hibernation. She reached the end. The grove underground. The tree waited, inverted above her, roots reaching into a sky that didn't exist. The hollow in its trunk glowed faintly. And from within, a sound. Not a whisper. Not a hum. A lullaby. Her mother's voice. Singing a tune from her childhood. The one she only half remembered. The one she used to hum when afraid. She wept. And the tree opened. A slit down its center. Hair spilled out. Then hands. Then the face. Her own. But wrong. Eyes too wide. Smile too thin. And the voice, not her mother's anymore. Just her. I'm almost done growing. One more layer of your name, and I'll wear you perfectly. You'll sleep. I'll speak. The world will listen. Emily backed away. Her feet didn't move. The ground held her in place. Roots coiled around her ankles, slow as breath, warm and living. I don't want this, she whispered. The tree answered, you already gave it. You called me in dreams. You sang the song. You followed the tunnel. You brought the hollow inside you. And then, from the bark of the tree, a new carving. Fresh. Her face. Mouth open. Inside the mouth, a tiny black egg. Cracking. She screamed. She woke in the armchair again. Morning sunlight poured through the window. The cabin looked ordinary. Safe. But her hands. Still marked. Still trembling. And in her mouth, something moved. She ran to the bathroom. Opened wide. Pulled it out. A strand of hair. Then another. Then something else, a tooth. Not hers. Small. Carved. Shaped like her own. She dropped it in the sink. It whispered as it landed, she's in your mouth. That night, she wrote one final entry in the journal. I don't know how much longer I can hold her back. Every word I write, she echoes. Every thought I have, she rewrites. I think she's growing in the hollow behind my eyes. I can feel her voice curling around the root of my name. If anyone finds this, please, don't say your name in the dark. Don't listen to the lullaby. Don't follow the tunnel. And whatever you do, don't let her speak through you. She's learning. And soon, she'll be able to lie in your voice. The fire crackled. The mirrors smiled. And in the basement, deep below, the egg in the hollow cracked again. Just once. A thin wail echoed through the tunnel. like the cry of something being born into a mouth that wasn't hers. It had been 9 days since Emily entered the cabin. Or so she thought. Time moved strangely here. It ticked sideways. She hadn't seen the sun rise in 2 days. Or maybe it never stopped rising. Maybe it had been rising forever, caught in a loop that peeled her memories back like old paint. The cabin no longer pretended to be normal. Its walls were pulsing. Its shadows stretched farther than physics allowed. Voices came not just from the mirrors, but from beneath the floors, the windows, even her own tongue when she spoke aloud. "This is how it ends," she whispered. "Or begins." And the fire answered, "There is no end. Only silence." Or song. She found new pages in the journal. This time, they were wet. Written in an ink that bled when she touched it, thick and dark, like oil. It wasn't her handwriting. Not Thomas's either. It was hers, now. The one inside. The one that grew in the hollow. You were the seed. You were the gate. And now, your mouth is mine. Emily turned the page, and found her own tongue pressed between 2 sheets like a dried flower. She screamed. But no sound came out. She stopped eating. Stopped sleeping. Only the cabin fed now. Its dreams grew inside her like vines, whispering stories she'd never lived, memories not her own. She saw Thomas again, standing in the hallway, face cracked like bark. He opened his mouth to speak, but moths flew out. Then her mother appeared. Then her sister. Then a version of herself that smiled too wide, eyes full of ash. They surrounded her. Each whispered a version of her name. Each one more hollow than the last. That night, she heard the sound again. The well beneath the floorboards, filling. Not with water, with voice. Every word ever whispered in fear. Every name ever spoken in the dark. She lifted the floorboards. And there it was, a deep stone shaft. At the bottom, a mirror-slick surface that rippled with breath. She stared. And the well stared back. "Speak," it said. "And I will leave you. Speak, and I will walk in your place. I will wear you like a coat. And no one will know." She leaned closer. Her reflection looked peaceful down there. At peace. But something moved behind it. A shape. A face not yet finished. Still carving itself. Using her voice. She knew what it wanted. The hollow was a name, not a place. A ritual. Passed from voice to voice. From story to story. The cabin wasn't a structure. It was a mouth. The tunnel, a throat. The tree, a tongue. And the journal, a seed. Each word planted deeper until it bloomed inside the mind of the next reader. A viral lullaby. And now, it wanted to be heard. By her. By others. By you. Emily made a decision. The final page of the journal was blank. Waiting. She dipped a stick into the fire's ash, and began to write. Not for herself. Not even to stop her. But to contain her. To seal her in ink. Because stories, once told, can become doors. But they can also become locks. She wrote, "This is where she ends. This is where I trap the hollow. With name. With memory. With silence. If you are reading this, she is still trying to learn you. But she is only real if you repeat her. So do not speak this story aloud. Do not say her name. Do not hum the song. And whatever you do, do not listen to her voice in your own mouth. Seal it. Forget it. Let her rot in the root." Emily folded the journal shut, wrapped it in cloth, tied it with hair, not hers, then walked to the hearth. The fire roared in recognition. She tossed it in. It screamed. The cabin shook. Mirrors shattered. The tree in the grove wailed through the floor. And in the walls, 1,000 mouths closed at once. The hollow tried one last time. We could have spoken forever. We could have sung the world clean. But she didn't answer. Not with her mouth. Not with her name. Only silence. And the sound of burning. At dawn, she stepped out into the snow. The cabin behind her was gone. Just trees now. And ash. She didn't know how long it would last. If the hollow would truly sleep. Or simply wait again. But she had done what she could. She began to walk. And deep beneath the earth, in roots and tunnels and forgotten wells, the hollow coiled itself inward. Wounded. Sleeping. For now. But even sleeping things can be heard. Especially in dreams. Especially, if you let them in. It begins again. Not in the forest. Not in the cabin. Not even in the hollow. It begins, with you. Sitting there. Listening. Breathing softly in the dark. Eyes maybe closed. Head resting against a pillow or chair. Maybe you're lying still, half asleep already. Maybe you're not even sure when this story began. Maybe you're only just now realizing you've been listening longer than you meant to. The words slid into your ears easily, didn't they? Gentle as a lullaby. They nested. Like seeds. Quiet ones. But something is stirring now. Isn't it? Just beneath your breath. Something not quite yours. You remember Emily. You remember the tree. You remember the voice in the mirror. The hum in the floor. You followed her story willingly. Curiously. But she tried to warn you. In her journal. In her silence. She said, don't speak her name. Don't hum the song. Don't listen too closely. And still, you stayed. Still, you listened. Still, you let the story finish. Didn't you? And that's how she enters. Not through a scream. Not through a mirror. Not even through fear. But through a full, quiet listening. You gave her your attention. That was the last piece she needed. You may hear her soon. Not loud. Not at first. Just soft sounds behind your dreams. A voice that mimics your own breath. A reflection that doesn't blink when you do. And if you ever hear her say your name, don't answer. Don't look in the glass. And whatever you do, don't speak this story aloud. Not to yourself. Not to anyone else. Let it die here. Let it rot in the roots. Let the fire seal it shut. And fall asleep knowing, the hollow only lives in what is repeated. So end it here. Forget the name. Forget the hum. Forget the cabin and the journal and the tree that grows with faces in its bark. Let this be the final time it's heard. Because if not, she learns. And if she learns you well enough, she speaks next. In your voice. Sleep well now. And don't dream of her. She's still listening.